Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. We are pleased to be joined, and we are pleased to kick off our team previews for the upcoming football season. Pleased to be joined by the head football coach at Mount Pleasant High School, and of course, also the AD at Mount Pleasant High School. That, of course, is Jason McIntyre. Jason, thank you for coming on and doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Casey. Appreciate all you do to recognize our football programs in the state, and anything I can do to promote what we do here, I'm happy to do.
All right, so why don't we talk about how the off season is going? We're kind of in that last week of 7-on-7s and stuff before for the off period next week, and then really starts getting going on August 11th. So really, how has the summer been going so far for the Oilers?
Yeah, I've been really pleased with our turnout. We've got a lot of good positive energy across all of our levels. When the state changed the summer routine a few years ago to the 15 practice thing and some of that stuff, it took some of us old guys a little time to adjust to what we traditionally had done, but I'm seeing that be more of a payoff now with what we're doing and kind of how we figure out how we want to use that different rule with the MHSA. So yeah, I think we've been able to get a lot accomplished. But you're right. I mean, you look at the calendar, and once the 11th hit, things just start to go so fast. So yeah, we got our last 7-on-7 tonight. And we're just trying to wrap up the summer and get ready to go.
So, obviously a lot of off time in between trying to figure out what's next coming next week. How is next week going to be done? Because obviously you're pretty busy because of course you're the AD, so you're going to be pretty busy yourself. But what is obviously I know guys are going to stay conditioned, and usually that's when things happen. So what is the next couple days planned coming up for Mount Pleasant?
Well, yeah, so we'll finish up with a little bit of strength training still this week, because we can, and then and a lot of people misinterpret next week, which I always joke with. I was just joking with my secretary earlier today about that. Is like I get frustrated when people call next week the dead week. It's officially what's called preseason downtime. I mean, we can't do any football, but we can do as much conditioning, weight training, whatever we want to do next week still with our guys. And so we have a tradition here at Mount Pleasant, and our alumni. Probably the most responses I get to social media or texts or whatever, well, from alumni will happen probably next week because we have a local park that has a sledding hill,
Yeah.
and it's a pretty steep hill, and so we meet there in the morning, and it's not a fun time for our guys, but we have a tradition of running that hill every day next week, that week before the season starts, and that's all we'll really do next week, and it's just kind of a tradition at Mount Pleasant, and I know I like it. I look forward to it just because of the tradition part. I'm a big tradition guy, and I know our players they're not looking forward to it probably as much, but it's just it's really good way to kind of just set the tone for going into the season.
Yeah. And of course, coming up this season, let's talk about the big questions and all that stuff, and let's go through the players on your team. We'll start with offense, and then we'll go to defense and some of the top returners and some of the guys to watch for you guys this year.
Yeah. So we were league champs 3 years in a row, and then last year we kind of we went 5-4, which I think was a really successful year for our team last year, where we were at after graduating a huge class at the end of 23. And we had a small senior class last year. So won a playoff game. We're really excited about that little momentum it gave us going into this year. So we had a lot of young guys contribute last year. I think when you look at our roster, you look at like the big names. Obviously, when you look at we have a 3-year starter at wide receiver and defensive back in Riley Olson. Riley probably statistically, if you look on paper, would be one of our key returners, a first team all conference player, had lots of receptions as a sophomore. And then I think probably he had a couple of injuries, but I would guess was probably our leading receiver last year. Statistically, I don't know off the top of my head, but and he also started in the secondary for us. So Riley's a key leader and has probably the most in-game experience of any of our players coming in, which is going to be crucial to us this year. On the offensive side of the ball, we have a lot of guys in that receiving core who contributed last year on and off in different ways, whether it be Zay Rodriguez or, we have a tight end who had an incredible offseason, who probably do a lot of hybrid stuff for us, and Jack Mazurkovich. So Running back's going to be real interesting this year. But our backfield is going to be new, and probably inexperienced in a way. We had a sophomore last year that, as the year progressed, became our key running back. His name was Torrey Gagne. Unfortunately, Torrey suffered a knee injury in basketball, which will prevent him from being who we were pretty sure was going to be our starter and the key guy in the backfield. So now it'll kind of be by committee, and it's going to be real interesting to see who steps up and takes on that role. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I could put a name to that position right now. As in, there's like 3 to 4 guys that are all working there and doing different things, and they all provide a different type of slash back, power back, different kind of thing to what we do. So very interesting. And in quarterbacks, the same way. We have 2 juniors competing for the position. Both have different styles and bring different things to the table. And it's kind of been, I would say, this is my 20th year as the head coach at Mount Pleasant. This is probably I'm at a point in the summer where I'm still the least certain of who our starting quarterback will be on day one. And not that it's a negative thing in that we don't know. I think we have 2 that are competing for that spot. Both juniors, Freddie Mackinnon and Xavier Crazier. Both they were doing a great job. Both, like I said, have different styles and bring different things to the table. And maybe in a way you end up using them both. I don't know. Those are coaching problems, right? Those are things we have to figure out, right? That's where our job comes in. But and then we got a fairly experienced offensive line back. Court French, our center, is back. And he, the center is always really a key thing to what you're going to do offensively. So yeah, I'm excited about where we are offensively, but I think on the offensive side of the ball, it's where I think we'll be I don't want to say vanilla for our style, but where we're going to have to be really simple to start with and ball control and take our big chances with guys like Riley when we can. But we're probably going to lean on our defense a little bit more, I think, to start the year, where I think I really like the experience we've returned there. So I think that's where we're at offensively. It could be a lot of new faces that can do, but I think it's a good thing. I think you're always interested to see where we're going to go. I guess go back to the offensive line for a second. I'm kind of jumping all over here, but yeah, Kyle Wallace is returning at tackle for us last year. He had a great junior season last year, and so he'll be real important to what we're doing on the. But the rest of the spots are kind of open on the offensive line. But I think there's guys who've got a lot of experience. That will pay off when we get ready to go this year. So
yeah, defensively, let's go there.
What I think I'm most excited about defensively is I think we have a very fast defense. We're not going to be big, which I think in today's game is okay. I think if I was coaching in 1999 or something, I'd want those big 3 techniques and nose guards and all those kind of things because you were stopping power football and all that stuff. But with the way the spread offenses are going now and those things, I think we're going to have a lot of speed on defense, which whether we're kind of in a 4-3 or 3-4 model, we vary. Everybody does that these days anyways. At linebacker, I guess I'll start with key. Will Garcia is a first-team all-conference safety last year. So he comes back and will play all over the field for us. Riley, I talked about Riley already, another safety. So we have 2 very experienced safeties. At corner, we have some real good speed, but those will be younger guys probably. I mentioned Zay Rodriguez on offense. He might be one of those corners. He might rotate in there. But we've got some young guys fighting for those spots, but there's a lot of good speed there. At the linebacker core, we return. I talked about Jack Mazurkovich at the tight end spot. He got a lot of reps as an outside linebacker last year. He'll probably fill in a role there some. Adrian Castellan was a starter for us as a sophomore last year until he got injured. He's now healthy and ready to go. We expect him to have a big year. Graham Phillips is kind of the leader of our team. He will be kind of he's the last of 4 Phillips brothers to go through our football program. So he'll be a senior, and he'll kind of be he's going to be a real big leader on that defense. He's worked extremely hard in the offseason. Probably our will linebacker, but it's hard to say for sure. But those guys have a lot of good athleticism, fly to the ball. And up front, we return almost everybody. And so, again, not big guys, more your 180 to 210 pound guys who can really move in space. Some are wrestler type bodies, some are wrestlers. So those guys will be real important when we get ready to roll there.
Yeah. Special teams, where are we at there?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's something that we probably. I would say a lot of head coaches will probably tell you don't do as much in the summer to prep and know where you're going to be at. But Carter Maxon was our junior kicker last year, but he kind of sat in the background behind a senior who's now going to kick at college level, and so he's worked really hard all through his career and has put a lot of time in the off season. I expect him to probably take on most of our key kicking duties. We'll see at punter. It might be Carter. It might be Riley Olson. It depends on what we're doing in regards to that. And like I said, when you have speed in your program, you feel good about your return game, but you never know. The number one thing in the return game is catching the ball first. So that'll be the challenge to start with. So we'll see where we end up special teams wise, but I feel good about that too.
All right. Well, we've talked about the kids. Now let's talk about the upcoming schedule for you guys. And of course, starts off on the road, and as you navigate through the city of Saginaw, as you head to Heritage Week 1, Saginaw United Week 2. Week 3 will be home against Midland Dow. Week 4 at Traverse City Central. Bay City Central Week 5 on September 26th. October 3rd at Bay City Western. October 10th home against Traverse City West. October 17th home against Midland, and finishing out the regular season October 24th at Ypsi Community. So a pretty good schedule for you guys, and of course kicking it off with with Heritage Week 1.
Yeah, no, that Heritage game is a tough one. Coach Thielen over there has done an incredible job of building that program. I think if you look at the records, we had a lot of success against Heritage when they were a league opponent for many, many years. When they became technically a non-league opponent, when we went to the North and South Division in our league and brought the Traverse Cities in, they became, so now they're kind of a non-league crossover. They're not even a crossover. Saginaw United is our crossover game. They're just a non-league pickup for both of us in Week 1. And since then, they've handled us pretty well the last couple of years. They're physical, fast, and they're competing at the Division II level, and they're having success at that. And I mean, let's face it, that south end of our league is really dominated by big schools and big programs: Grand Blanc, Davison, Lapeer, right? And now they're competing with those schools week in and week out. So they're a huge challenge for us. I have learned to love that as a Week 1 game for us because it's a great measuring stick. And being it's a non-league game, it doesn't affect a lot of those things. So I'll use last year, for example. We took we did some good things in that game, but we took a pretty good thump in both from a physical standpoint and some mental adjustments defensively we didn't handle well. And so we grew up a lot after that game. That was a good, real important game for setting the tone for the rest of our season, even with a loss. So I think we're going to be much more prepared for that game this year from a mental standpoint and hopefully a physical standpoint. But they present a huge challenge with everything they're doing over there, and they set us up very well. And then, like you said, then from there, it's just, the Saginaw Valley League is a gauntlet week in and week out. You have to be ready every Friday night in our league. There's the traditional teams that are always strong in our league and are always competing for a league championship, like Midland and us and other schools. But every team understands the tradition in our conference. They understand the strength of our conference. Everybody will point to the 2022 season for us, where we came off an undefeated season. We were league champs in 21. We ended up league champs in 22, and we went over to Bay City Central on their homecoming night, and they haven't been traditionally a strong team in our league over the last few years, and they beat us, right? And shocked really the league, but that's our league. Like, anything can happen week in, week out in our league. And so, and when we added the Traverse Cities a few years ago, that really strengthened the football tradition in our league. Traverse City West has a real good thing going right now. They put it to us pretty good last year. They have probably one of the best players in our league. Coming back for his third year on the varsity, and I think he has an offer from Central Michigan University. So there's a lot of challenges week in and week out. I think at the high school level, I say it every year, how healthy do you stay? That's got to be your number one thing, because high school teams just don't have a lot of depth. And, as I've mentioned earlier, we've already been hit by the injury bug in the offseason a little bit, right? So that presents some challenges to us. So you got to stay healthy. You can't control your opponents and who they are and what they are. So it's just about how well we're prepared week in and week out.
Absolutely. So getting ready for week one, I don't think I've ever asked a coach this, but how do you approach week one? Because it's so different for everybody.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult thing. I think we pride ourselves in here in being prepared mentally every week in terms of a scouting. And that's a lot easier to do when you've seen somebody play a game. But when you're your week one opponent, you haven't seen them play a game. What do you know about them? What are they going to do? You're adjusting so much that week. And so that's always, I think, the biggest challenge with a week one opponent is your knowledge of that team. You watch their scrimmage film, but you don't necessarily have numbers of players, right? You're trying to guess who that player is. And every coach has a different way of approaching the scrimmage in terms of what they show and don't show. We're paranoid. Football coaches are probably the most paranoid people on the planet, right? And I've learned over the years to stop being that guy. But I'll give Coach Theo over at Heritage props. He's been pretty good at hiding stuff on us, and kind of not showing his hand. So that's something you've learned, right? So you have to take the information you learn year in and year out. So when I watch his scrimmage film this year, I'm probably not going to put as much merit into it as I maybe did the first year we played him in week one, where you prepare a lot defensively, offensively for what you see in the scrimmage film. So those are things you learn. And so it's a very difficult week one. It's a great question, because week one is a very different prep. So you focus a lot on yourself. You realize that your guys are going to lose their minds. That's something that comes with 20 years of experience, because week one, you can't simulate varsity football. You just can't. You can't do it with a live scrimmage. You can't do it with a live practice. You can't. So they're going to run out with all this adrenaline, and they're going to forget all the things you taught them and all these kind of things. So you have to really try to keep it simple and really wrap the things that are going to be important in order to get through that first week.
All right. And then really just your approach toward camp. I know we kind of talked about, with the conditioning week next week, or I know some teams give the kids some time off, or however you want to do it. There's a lot of programs that do a lot of things differently and stuff, but
yep.
What is the next few weeks going to be like as you approach camp? And then really, what are the next few weeks like before that first game against Heritage?
Yeah. And the way the MHSA structures the first week, it's tricky. And I'm sure a lot of coaches feel this way. Now that we have those 15 days of practice in the summer or whatever, those first 2 days of practice are really awful. I mean, because what you have now is you're trying to get all this energy and excitement for the first start of the season. And that first 2 days is the exact same thing you've been doing all summer, right? You're in helmets only. You haven't put shoulder pads on. You can't really do anything. So you're trying to make it feel different because it is official practice. And you've got a few new faces, right? Because let's face it, there's some guys who don't do stuff all summer and then show up on the first day. So you're doing that. But really that first day, I use it a lot to get through all the stuff that's a pain in the butt, right? The paperwork, the physicals, the checking off, the checkoff list, all these things. And then I try to use the first week. What's really big for me, we start school now the second Thursday. Yeah. It's crazy, super early. Yep. So you used to have 2 weeks of two-a-days. You used to have, three, you used to play a game before school started. You used to do these things. And so now, being that week is the only week I have the guys all to myself, no school stuff, nothing. I use a lot of that week to talk about our program, to talk about our tradition, to talk about our expectations. So at our break, we're obviously working a lot on football, but because I have them more time and we do have a few 2-a-day type practices, I use those breaks and those time in between to teach them what our alumni and what I expect out of them as Oiler football players. And so we spent a lot of time on that, and that's a big thing in that first week. So because that's something you can do in those first 2 days when you're in helmets only, and that's what you've been doing all summer. And then finally we get to start putting the shoulder pads on Wednesday. We start really getting into football, and then that first Friday is the only time we'll probably fully live hit ourselves. And so we'll do that Friday. That first Friday will be kind of like Friday game day, right? Our guys will be all excited. We get to tackle somebody, we get to block somebody, we get to do it full speed. So we try to throw out a lot of the teaching, because that's probably our biggest evaluation day of the year, right? Everything we thought about all these guys all summer, everything we thought about them the first few days of practice, somebody, and I tell my guys the same thing, somebody's going to change our thinking on Friday. We're going to find a guy where we go, oh boy, we need to find a way to get him on the field somehow because he's a physical football player. Or we're going to be like, oh boy, we thought this guy was our guy and now maybe he's not. And so the depth chart changes the most probably after that first Friday, and then again after that first scrimmage the following week.
Interesting.
Yep.
You never really know what goes on.
Yep.
With those first few weeks. So thanks.
And especially if we're bringing back, we have a few returners we know about and you don't need to worry about, but then we've got these JV guys moving to varsity football for the first time, and those are the guys we're really heavily evaluating.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Jason, thank you so much for the time as always, and best of luck to the Oilers this season, and we will talk to you soon, Jason.
All right. Thanks for everything you do, Casey.